Hi, everyone. My name is Stanton Jones, and I'll be your host for our webinar today. So today I'm joined by two of my colleagues, and they're actually not just colleagues, they're also good friends. Lois Coatney, partner and president of ISG GovernX, and Bill Huber. And Bill leads our digital platforms and solutions practice. So before we jump into the content today, first let me say thank you. Thank you so much for giving us some of your precious time right now. We know it's at a premium. And secondly, we absolutely understand that the coming weeks and months are going to be a huge challenge for all of us, really, as we try to take care of our families, our friends, our neighbors, our coworkers, and our clients. But we're also incredibly confident that we're going to get through this together and that we're going to come out stronger in the end. So to that end, we wanted to share with you some ideas on how to start making that happen now. So we're going to be basing the next 45 minutes or so on some guidance that we published over the weekend on our website. So what you can see here are the top 5 actions we believe enterprises should be taking immediately in response to COVID-19. And those are first, assessing the potential for near-term disruption by focusing on what's most business critical for you. And so once you've made that assessment, working with your critical suppliers to assess their continuity plans, and at the same time, helping your employees make this transition to a new way of working. And also making sure that the technology that your employees are using will support them in this new way of working. And finally, getting prepared to very quickly optimize costs given the potential that we're all facing for near-term business disruption. So I'm going to ask Lois and Bill to take us through each one of these in more detail, and then we'll close it out with your questions and feedback, as Jillian said. And finally, before we jump in, we are going to be referencing a couple of quick diagnostic tools that we've published on our website. And the links to those are at the bottom of these slides. And again, as Jillian said, the slides, of course, will be available for download as well. Okay, so let's jump into our first top 5. So Lois, I'm going to actually start with you. So tell us how companies should be assessing the potential for service disruption.
Sure, thanks, Stanton. And it's good to talk to you all today. This is probably, I don't know who coined the phrase, it takes a village. This is definitely a time where it takes a village, and we all know that there are many partners, many participants in the environment, in our clients' environments, in our providers' environments, to really make sure that we can really continue to provide services both to our end consumers, to our employees. This is a time to understand how we best do that and as smoothly as we can as we weather this crisis. So the first thing I wanted to chat with you guys about is really how do you make sure you're working on the most important things first? There are a lot of providers in a particular environment. We have clients who have upwards of 1,000+ providers, and the areas that they need to support are, very vast across the globe, across their employees. And how do you really determine where you need to spend your time first? And, we take a look at how you prioritize. And as Stanton mentioned, there's a tool that we put together that we're going to be talking about. But in order to utilize that tool, you need to think about what is most important, what has the biggest impact to your business. And in the past, we've thought about prioritizing suppliers. When you think about tiering your contracts, that's one view, that we've often looked at, kind of where you need to spend your time and managing and ensuring, good day-to-day delivery. You also can take a look at your relationships. You have managed services, you have commodity type services. They kind of run the plethora of different ways that delivery occurs. Those are good, but now is the time really to think about risk impact. how you determine what is the biggest risk area or the impact it has to your business if something falters. And we really look at three kinds of severities when we think about risk impact. One is if it could truly cripple what's taking place. If you have an application or a capability that your end consumers will be impacted by. If you have a bank and it's the ability for them to do online banking and what are all the components, the processes, the tools, et cetera, to enable online banking, that's a critical high severity. You also, though, have essential business functions, things that are impactful for long-time sustainability. And we're going to talk a little bit about, today there's kind of almost maybe a new normal. You hear that term a lot because we're having to shift the way that we operate. So what may not have been important before may now be critically important or really important for the business to be able to sustain. And we'll talk a little bit about how we identify those. And also, what are those things that are potentially non-essential today? Now, doesn't mean they get off the list, right? It could be causing some friction. It might be a bit disruptive, but it's something that, you and your firm, your company can kind of grapple with for now. And at some point in time, you're going to have to prioritize it. So because of the vast broadness of suppliers, because of all the components of your business, you really need a tool to help you figure out where does my business fit. So we put together this decisioning matrix, and as Stanton said, this is available for you online, but we kind of go through a series of questions to help us figure out what are the most critical areas to put your energy immediately. The first one probably is, revenue generation, right? As I talked about, if you have a banking application for your online consumers, or even if you think about other businesses where now online is much more prevalent, those are the ones that you probably want to think about first. And if they are directly related to revenue, absolutely they would be a priority. How about sustaining the core of your business? Things such as raw materials, if you're in a manufacturing space, or transportation, or even if you think about your payroll systems, or being able to support in this new normal, maybe now you're trying to ensure that your network and your ability to communicate across the globe to all those key teams who before might have been able to sit into an office, now they're sitting remotely. Those are now going to be much more of a priority today, and you need to consider those as something, as an item to take a look at. And then the third here is sensitive to human welfare and health. I think we're all very sensitive now. There's certainly industries that are really gearing up, trying to scale as quickly as they can to be able to address the needs of people around the globe. And so if there are particular products or services or capabilities that are to support that now highly critical aspect of the world around us, those need to prioritize. And so if you said yes to any of those, then it's a point of how significant or strategic or critical is it. If it's yes to all of those, that fits into your business activity critical. Those are the things that you need to immediately start working with those suppliers, understanding who are the participants in that, understanding where those suppliers are located, what sort of regions are they located, or what sort of, whether it be the buildings or what sort of areas of the globe that they might be more hit or less hit, where are they located, so you collectively can have those discussions about ensuring that you're safeguarding those operations. Another thing to note is that regulatory compliance may be evolving. I couldn't go through right now what are all the things that are happening in regulations, but make sure you keep an eye to what's happening around regulatory compliance because changes are occurring, and I'm sure they're going to occur rapidly. So make sure you also keep that into your purview as to how it might impact what you need to do into your firm.
One thing I might just add as sort of a compliment to what Lois was saying, When you think about revenue generating activities, it's not just things that are directly generating revenue. You need to think about your company's reputation. Right now, all of our customers and clients are nervous about things. And the more you can demonstrate the ability to be there for them and to provide continuity of responsiveness to them, that's going to ensure that they keep coming back to you. So when you go through any of these categories, you may need to think a little bit more broadly than you would under normal circumstances, given the uncertainty of these times. So just think broadly and really creatively when going through this type of exercise.
That's really a good point, Bill, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because you're right. This is a different time, and we need to work collectively as a team to understand what the impact might be and to think differently about our business. All right, Stan, back to you.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Lois. So Bill, I'm gonna come to you next. So we just talked about business process prioritization. So, once that exercise is done, how are you guiding your clients to think about, how should they be working with their providers to assess the business continuity plans that might support those processes?
Yes, thank you, Stanton. So the first thing is really to understand what's theoretically in place. And I say theoretically because many companies will find that there are business continuity plans on paper, but they haven't been tested. So review what's in place, make sure there's something in place. In some cases, you may find that there isn't one, but understand the different parameters of it, and then meet with your key providers who are delivering different managed services to you and understand, where are they right now? If they have work from home arrangements, where are those people? How many people are currently doing work from home? How many are sidelined because they simply don't have the connectivity in place to support all of them? But just try to establish right out of the gate a very open line of communication so that you can realistically assess what you're working with, and try to do it in a spirit of candor and collaboration with your providers. That's going to be critical to you as you move forward. The second thing to do is to really go through your own statements of work and SLAs, and we've all written them in better, more normal times. And there were things that were absolutely mission critical at those times, which if you re-looked at them through the lens of where we are today, you would say, that's really not a priority anymore. That's not a differentiator. Right now, what's a key differentiator is doing only these things. And keep those in your back pocket, because at some point you may need to be collaborative with your provider because there may be some resource constraints, and you may want to pick and choose and relax some of your requirements so that you can assure that the resources are put on the other ones. And we're not talking about a permanent relaxation, and it's also something that you can, negotiate economically so that there's some consideration down the road. But right now, it's going to be very important, for you to know what your needs are, to prioritize those needs, and be prepared to have those conversations in those situations where you do find there are some capacity challenges on the part of your providers, and you need to just pragmatically work through them. The third thing is really to develop contingency plans, more than one, because it's quite possible that some of your providers may not be able to meet your needs, and you may need to think creatively. You may need to think about workaround apps to use for certain things, or repurposing certain other people in your organization to do things. And you'll probably need more than one plan. So have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, and figure out what steps you need to put in place now. It might be some preliminary training. It might be some technology enablement, or it could be a number of things. But start thinking about it and make sure that you are positioning those things in place in case you have to move over to plan A or plan B or plan C. And then set up a regular cadence for communication with your providers. You're going to need some sort of a quick daily touch point. It doesn't have to be long, but it's important to keep those channels of communication open to make sure you both know what's going on that day, what are your concerns, what are your issues, what are the workarounds, how are they going. Developing that cadence is going to be critical to ensuring that that you're working together, that you get the right attention, and you're not hit by surprises. And then you probably will need to do some sort of a periodic, and I would say under these circumstances, probably at least weekly, some escalation type of meeting with with someone at a fairly senior level at both organizations, just to make sure that there's that contact and reassurance of commitment and prioritization, and that you're both demonstrating the importance of the relationship. Then you'll obviously need to monitor everything very, very closely, report and escalate within your organization so that people are aware where there might be some issues coming down the road. And lastly, you're just going to need to be flexible. We're all operating under very flexible conditions right now, and we just need to keep sight of that. Similar to what Lois mentioned, we have a checklist, and this is one of those tools where we will have a link on our website so you can access it. And really, what this will do is give you, an ability to evaluate for the breadth of the severity and score the service criticality designation, to be able to manage resources and infrastructure and staffing and criticality, and also to make sure that the right things are in place from a legal and risk perspective and a communication perspective. So we invite you. It's a very simple tool that you can use, but we think it'll be very helpful to you as you begin assessing and manage your business continuity plan. Stanton, back over to you.
Thanks, Bill. So Lois, I'm actually going to come back to you on this. There was a really great article on Bloomberg maybe a week or two or so ago about how this is likely going to be the biggest work from home experiment in history over the coming weeks and months. So what kind of guidance are we giving to our clients and enterprise leaders about helping them help their employees prepare for really a new way of working?
Yeah, and we're probably all sitting in our home offices right now, probably doing this webinar, so it is a new way of working. And I guess, we can look at it, I think, many of us have talking about this is a very difficult time to be in, but this is also an opportunity. I think we all need to look at it as an opportunity to really, the things that we've been trying to do, I think leading up to this, we've been trying to put in collaboration tools, ways for our workforce to be more flexible, to be able to work effectively across the globe, because we are in a global economy. And this is really putting a test to that, and I think an opportunity to really help us jump into trying that. And once we get past this, that new normal might be, a good mixture between the way we used to work and what we learned in the way we work today. We did last year, our ISG research team did some assessments about where are most enterprises in their ability to enable employees to work from any location, to enable them to access systems basically where they are in a self-service way. And unfortunately, we saw it's pretty small. It's under 50%, even if you look at employees who can work from any location. 27% is in production, another 39% in a limited way. And that's being tested right now, right? It's really challenging all of us. And I think, if you think about even as a society, we're trying to figure out how to do distance learning. Our children and our college kids are at home right now. We have to figure out how to make this work, and we're figuring out how to make it work very quickly. There's some things, and I've got a team myself who, a sizable team in Bangalore, India, and, they're all working at home, out of their homes today as well. And so we need to come up with really good ways to help that work. And engagement, to me, is probably the biggest thing. When we think about being in an office with our colleagues, working closely between, our clients and providers, we're there because it's easy to work together. We're very productive. We can talk to folks as you walk down the hall. So how do you continue to enable that sort of engagement while you're all distanced from each other? And I think I look at it three different ways. One, between a leader and employee. Talk about it. Talk about expectations. Talk about how you plan on communicating effectively to be able to understand where from a structured or an unstructured way. There's emails and there's team meetings, but there's also picking up the phone. There's also sending a chat. We need to connect often, right? We need to continue to ensure that there's structure, and it starts with the leader. Have morning stand-up meetings, have midday check-ins. Provide an avenue or forum for your staff to get together and talk about what's happening so that you can provide information about what's happening around the company, and then as well as they are able to kind of learn from each other and adapt to this together and not feel isolated. Between clients and suppliers, it is critically important, as Bill had mentioned, you need to talk often. You need to give often short, feedback. This is where I'm at. Give a status. Use multiple mediums such as emails and chats. This is a time not to disappear, not to go, quiet for days. It is important to check in every single day and use video as much as you can. Now, this has been an interesting topic because I think we've heard there's a lot of strain happening on the networks because of the use of video, but I think it's really important, especially in key meetings, to have that video option. And as you do, just pay attention to your posture, pay attention to what's happening in the background. There's different ways and different tools that will enable you to, help desensitize and have privacy for those who are on video about what's in the background, but still be able to have that face-to-face sort of communication. And lastly, with team members, use this time to chat often. It can be very isolating. And what's great about work when you have work in a team, you can socialize, you can talk about what happened over the weekend. You still need to do that. Don't feel like when you get on the phone, it's only about business. Make sure you use this as an opportunity to catch up, to maybe have lunch together while you're chatting. There's ways to do it, and you can use technology to enable you to do that. A couple things about technology, and Bill's going to go into more about the technology options that we have available. But I guess the main thing I want to talk about is use this as an opportunity to train. We found when we did that research, the biggest frustration among employees is they just don't know how to use all these workplace tools. They haven't really been forced to do it. So they've been relying on email, and they've been relying on some of those standard ways of operating. But this is an opportunity to really help them learn. So really ramp up the FAQs, give out helpful hints. I found, and even in our firm, when there are some, well, I'll consider power users within your organization and you're on a team meeting and you're utilizing a collaboration tool, take an opportunity to say, hey, I'm going to use this new way of taking notes, or I'm going to load this file, and this is a way that we can all add to this file and collaborate together. Use those opportunities, and everybody on that call, everybody can learn how to do it, and then they'll use it with the next team that they're going to go meet with. Make sure that you're really driving folks to use those resources to get that data and to help each other in being able to learn how to use these. And again, as leaders, be role models and use the technology. And then the last thing I would talk about is just state of mind. I think we're all probably really struggling. There's good days and bad days. I think we're all probably feeling them. But make sure as leaders, don't assume your teams are just going to figure it out. This is a time as leaders to have those meetings, right? Set up for the first thing in the morning, get everybody on the phone. Make sure you do check-ins. Make sure you're giving helpful hints. Reach out a lot more often and communicate a lot more often. Those water cooler talks are not taking place, so you as a leader, make sure that you're engaging the team on a regular basis. And as far as employees and those who are not used to working out of your home office, get up even earlier in the morning before the house starts to wake up. Dress for work. Close the door. Think about what are the deliverables I'm going to get done as you think about that day. This is the time to really reach out, use technology, really determine how you're going to get the work done, and I think we're going to learn a lot of great habits out of what we're really experiencing today.
So just a couple real quick points to kind of bring a little color to some of Lois's comments. My parents happen to live close by, and my dad's going to be 92 in May. My mom just turned 89. So, of course, they're in the most vulnerable segment of society, and they like to normally go out to eat because my dad still drives and so on. So he has always resisted using any apps on his phone. But, of course, this circumstance, when I loaded Uber Eats onto his phone and showed him how to use it, he was much more open to it. And I think that's what you will see, even much more so with our work colleagues who've been resistant to doing new things. Necessity is the mother of invention, and now all of a sudden, all of the things that have been resisted become very enabling. So you'll see a different reaction to a lot of the change management, and perhaps before where you saw things resented as being imposed, now they're going to be welcomed because they're a path to getting things done to enablement. The second thing is just, as Lois mentioned also about showing a face and taking time to do some video and all that. It's so important to have that social element from a reassurance and from a leadership standpoint. Don't lose sight of just how important it is. It doesn't need to be all the time from a video standpoint, but do make sure people can see your face, see your reaction, can express themselves. It will make a huge difference in moving forward. Jen?
Yeah, and I think compassion, because we're all being impacted both personally and professionally, this is a time for compassion. And like you said, Bill, when we can show our faces and we can still be compassionate with our colleagues and with our clients, this is the time to do it. And you're right.
Yeah, guys. So I would underscore the comment you made, Bill, on video. How important that's already becoming, and I think it's going to become even more important over the coming weeks as we continually need to socially distance ourselves, which is the right thing to do. But just the difference that we're seeing it make amongst ourselves with our clients to be able to have that video interaction, I think is going to be incredibly important. That said, that's also going to put a huge strain on network capacity, both on internal networks and on public internet, and just in general on our technology, because in many cases, we're not set up to work remotely. We're set up to work within the walls of a data center. So Bill, talk a little bit about what are the kind of fundamental technology changes that you think are happening right now and our clients are going to need to start to rapidly adopt in order to kind of work within this new norm?
So Stanton, one great example is we know that there are cases where people are trying to access things that require bandwidth and they're finding some limitations on them. So people are getting creative in terms of if my local normal bandwidth, my cell service is over capacity in the region, or if my broadband is over capacity, how do I get that connectivity I need right away? And people are getting very creative about it, even doing things like pulling up to somewhere where they know there's a fiber network, like a Walmart parking lot or parking outside of a Starbucks or Kroger or things like that, and using that as a temporary way to be connected. It's going to take creativity. In terms of what companies need to do, you need to figure out how to overcome some of those challenges quickly. How can you scale your infrastructure fast? How can you leverage the cloud? So again, this is one of those necessity is the mother of invention types of things. And a lot of the arguments that have been out there about not moving to cloud now are going to be overcome to some degree, because cloud is the avenue to scale a lot of things much more quickly than you'd be able to otherwise. Things like being able to use software-defined networks to find the optimal capacity quickly. So companies need to look at how they should go about doing it, how they should expand their network, how they should look at different methods of unified communication, and what it's going to take to accelerate the rollout and use of collaboration applications. We also are going to find ways to digitize our processes, right? So this is going to drive increased migration to SaaS solutions and also to web-enabled apps. I mean, I can imagine increased reliance where, on a lot of things that have been initially developed for consumer applications, sometimes being reapplied towards business use. Contact center as a service is a very fast way to scale up the ability to support a lot of your clients. And contact center as a service is a technology that is built around a work from home type of model. So it's something which can be really quickly deployed in this kind of instance. We're going to see more use of Internet of Things like sensors to augment and eliminate physical processes. So, how will you connect your cameras and temperature gauges and air sensing things to kind of monitor the state of your inventory and apply big data and analytics solutions to quickly determine how to move things around where you can't always have people physically being on site and checking things. And then lastly, with all of this expansion of remote access and work from home, companies need to very quickly assess their cybersecurity capabilities and figure out what else they need to do to reduce the vulnerabilities.
One thing I could add on that too, Bill, is, we've gotten some phone calls from our clients about, because we help them manage their vendor management space and their contracts. And when they have contracts sitting in, they may have been scanned, so it's electronic in some way, but the ability to share information and have data available to them that teams can use, especially in this point in time, right, when they all really need to understand what's in their contracts and how can they best put solutions in place with their providers. They found that they were a little bit, taken aback that they didn't have the information available to them. So I would add on to, like you said, not just having documents stored, but being able to get at data, not just documents, but data. Now's the time to really help to kind of flesh that out and be able to have ways to analyze that and have that accessible by everybody in the team.
Yeah, absolutely, Lois. It's, I hate to use the phrase "the good thing about this pandemic," but I do believe that there's going to be so much innovation that comes out of the back end, and it's going to be so important for those firms that are going to come out stronger to really use this as something to instill that sense of urgency to drive that necessary innovation, and that there will be long-term positive impacts from some of this. We talked a little bit about unified communication as a service, and the fact that it's immediately scalable. The other thing that goes with it is that by doing it as a service, you can actually know what it's going to cost you. So you can build that into your plans with some degree of certainty versus trying to do all of it yourself, which can be open to a lot of additional contingencies. There's also with unified communication as a service, there's a lot of built-in automation available right now within existing products. So things like automatic speech recognition and speech-to-text kind of capabilities that can do things like facilitate taking meeting minutes and things like that. There's a really cool artificial intelligence being built into a lot of it. So I think there'll be some interesting discoveries as many of our clients discover just how powerful this can be. We talked earlier about, how do you, in the short term, also just look for opportunistic use of hotspots. I think we just need to make sure our people know that if they can be creative, they can be connected in the short term while we're putting in the capabilities to improve their connectivity in the slightly less short term. The other thing really to focus on is simply the collaboration tools that are out there as well as unified communication. So, tools that are really built to help customer engagement, client engagement, work collaboration. All of the leading players have great tools out there. We are using Microsoft Teams internally much more heavily than we were even a few days ago. Use of WebEx, use of Slack. These are the types of things that really will help to facilitate that social collaboration, which is so important. Sharing perceptions and sentiments as well as just information. And, there's been a huge advance in how much has been embedded into the tools that are in the market right now. You're also going to see a lot of traditional company culture playing a role in how collaborative companies are, but we do think those companies that are better at being collaborative are those that will be most resilient in this environment. So if you feel your company culture is not traditionally a collaborative one, use the opportunity of using these tools to drive that change. We think it'll make a big difference in motivating and enabling how teams are able to work together.
And I think we can't emphasize enough the organizational change management, right, associated with that. And, I think we're spending a lot of time with both clients and providers to help figure out what's the best way from a rapid perspective to really instill that sense of understanding of how it can play a role, and even what are other options out there. There's project management tools that are great at collaboration. There's obviously, around chat or development of documents to support meetings, but there really is a broad range of capabilities that you can utilize, and now's the time to really experiment.
Yeah, and the range of options can actually be overwhelming if you're trying to make a decision on the short term. So, and there's not always going to be time for traditional long RFI, RFP types of approaches. So really, this is an area where you can tap into an expert who knows the marketplace and can just kind of give you a very accelerated way to help make decisions and to understand this. We have research available. There are many other great sources of research available. We're not trying to make this into a commercial, but we do want you to know that this is where you do have trusted advisors. They can really help you to sort through the complexity of this and make some really good decisions more quickly than if you try to do it on your own. So just keep that in mind, because it's so important to move fast and to move with a high degree of certainty in these areas.
Awesome, thanks guys. So let's go to our final top five. So Bill, I'm going to stay with you on this. So obviously, we're seeing a number of industries being dramatically impacted by COVID, so especially areas like energy and travel, transportation, entertainment. So as you close us out on our final top five, talk to us about how companies should be preparing to optimize their costs given the near-term disruptions in potential revenue streams.
Yeah, thanks, Stanton. So one of the realities is first of all, there's a lot of costs which are just being cut automatically because you can't spend money, right? We've cut travel, we've cut entertainment expense. In some cases, we just aren't able. We're going to cut some of our people expense because we're not able to do certain things we were able to do. And those are kind of knowns, but there are other things which are less obvious, obviously demand management type of activities, where there are actions we can take in adjusting requirements, adjusting pricing, avoiding errors in invoices and payments and things like that. So the first thing that every company needs to do is really kind of assess where those opportunities are quickly and develop a view of the hot spots so you can begin taking action on them. It's going to be very important to manage unproductive, unnecessary costs right out of the gate now, and also to get started on those things that are going to take a little more time to bring those savings, because even if you may take a short-term hit to your revenue right now, you want to make sure that you're able to make up some of that gap in terms of better managing your cost structure, 3 months from now, 4 months from now, 6 months from now. It's all going to be important this year. So don't limit yourselves to the things that will have immediate impact. The things that will have impact a little bit later down the road that you start now are going to be equally important. So think about those things as well. Secondly, you need to really think digitally and think about new models and how do you redesign, because this is, again, as we've talked about earlier on this call, a very natural impetus to change and overcome some things that you might have had all kinds of organizational resistance to in the past. Now you can build better mousetraps. And if you think about it, there are ways to finance that in such a way that you can afford to do it now. But by starting now on those paths, you're going to come out at the other end with some better models, which will be at a lower cost, which will have a higher degree of effectiveness and provide a better customer experience and provide you with better information and data and insights coming out of the work that you do. And so make that part of your strategy out of the gate, because that's going to be the determinant of your long-term success. And then lastly, as part of cost optimization, you need to create that governance structure to put transparency into what you're doing, to create that sense of urgency and to track and measure results and create energy around these campaigns within your organization. It really becomes a key element of driving momentum, to have right governance, and then the right organization change management to go along with it, so that as you do all of these things, and I know that organizational change management has come up in almost every segment of this, but it's so critical here as in the other segments. People will be doing things differently. They need to understand why. They need to know what's coming next. They need to be trained in how to do things, and you can't lose sight of all those things, because that's going to empower your workforce to help you to really realize the benefits of doing this. When you look at the specific cost savings areas you can go after, they're the short-term things that can happen right away. And those are things that can involve a renegotiation or an audit of invoices and fees or circuits, or some very quick sourcing types of activities and some very quick demand management activities. But there are also going to be those things that just take a little bit longer because there's more complexity in them. There might be a dependency on doing one thing first before you can do the next. So those are the things that will have a 3 to 6 month horizon for you. And examples of that might be, to re-rationalize some of your sourcing agreements, because there's complexity in who's doing what, and there's more involved in renegotiation of that. And then there are the longer term things that, as mentioned earlier, you need to start now. And it's not just the digital transformation, but it's also a lot of cleanup activity. So removing technical debt. Technical debt is something that costs your company money because it makes it more expensive to maintain older technologies. Rationalizing your applications. So figure out what applications are redundant or less used, and where you can move to reduce the cost of supporting them and the licensing costs associated with them, and move to a leaner set of applications that are going to have a lower support cost going forward. And longer term use of things like of automation and cognitive and so on are really going to make a difference here. So start now, but think about the 3 time horizons and start prioritizing how you can move forward on activities that will benefit you in all 3 time horizons.
And I think to add to that too is, while you go through, as we talked about before, understanding where the major risks within your operation that you need to focus on now, you will most likely be understanding where providers are, where contracts are, what are those relationships today, probably pulling off those contracts to understand where your spend is. Use this as an opportunity to really get your arms around what all your contracts and your agreements are. We have found that when you can have your eye on when things are expiring, kind of get in front of that, like you talked about rationalizing, there is a great deal of savings opportunities when you just kind of get your arms around that and rationalizing your clauses across your contracts. So maybe there are areas that hadn't been a priority before, now might be the opportunity when you're going through this analysis. Use this as a kickstart to start to, pull some of those things together as well and evaluate other aspects as to how you can save money.
Yep, absolutely, Lois. And also, I know that we have quite a few service providers on this call, and this is really, a great opportunity for you all to be creative and be great partners to your clients. So, as you can see from this slide, and we've talked about this theme on previous slides, it's be strategic while taking out the tactical costs, do things to build and design for the future. And there are ways that we can harmonize the sunsetting of older applications with the launching of newer, lower cost ones at the same time. There are ways that we can work the financing of those things to make that possible. There are ways that we can repurpose and suggest things in our current agreements to transform the nature in these situations, which will accelerate that realization of a lower cost model in the future. And it's something that I encourage all of us to really think hard about, both on the provider side and on the client customer side, and work together, because again, this is the opportunity to do something that's really going to make a big difference. Lastly, and we touched on this as the sort of the third stream in the first slide in the section of driving that cost optimization culture. You want to use governance to drive action. You want to use it to sustain the momentum. You're going to need to remove roadblocks. They're going to come up. We've all encountered them, and we all do encounter them. People are going to say, I can't do that, or there's a regulatory reason, or there's a procedural reason, or there's a security reason. And so from a leadership and governance perspective, we need to have the right process and capability and attention in place to escalate those issues and come up with solutions to those issues, because we are going to have to solve those issues. We're going to have to reallocate resources on the fly very often. And that, again, is going to be at a governance pay grade, not just at an operating pay grade. And then, again, from a change management perspective, recognize the importance of constant communication, of helping with organizational process change and adaptation and familiarity with the new technology, and getting engagement feedback from our people out there in the field or working remotely, so we understand what challenges they're facing and how we can help them through it. And then lastly, of course, we just need to provide that training to them, and it's going to be training in all kinds of forms, but it'll be very much an on-demand and a fast type of thing. So Lois, anything else you'd like to add?
I think we've covered quite a bit. I think, we've talked about a lot of different components around continuity, around cost savings. I'd be interested in what some of the questions are. I think there's a few questions coming in, Stanton, from the team. So I don't know if maybe there's some specific areas we should address.
Sure. Yeah, happy to take that. Yeah, we are getting some questions coming in, so thank you. So first question, I think I'll go ahead and take this one. So the first question we have is, how prepared are offshore IT providers to implement work-from-home models? Is the infrastructure strong enough? So the Indian government has actually responded quite rapidly to this. So they have legally cleared the way for work from home for the private sector and to some extent for the public sector. So providers are, in many cases, delivering desktops and laptops to employees to their homes, and that those required approvals from local governments have been granted. And this is, this kind of was already underway in areas like China, and so India is learning very quickly from what China has learned. Speaking of collaboration, I'm actually chatting with my colleagues in Bangalore as we speak, and it's my understanding that the Indian Prime Minister is actually addressing the nation in about 10 or 15 minutes on this topic around some more specific guidance around COVID. And so one of the things that we are going to be doing is on a fairly regular cadence is pushing out, as we learn more, we're going to be pushing out that guidance and that information both on the ISG website and through social media. So make sure and stay tuned there for kind of the most up-to-date insight.
And I can add to that too. I can add to that too, Stanton. We also have a delivery organization, as you mentioned, in Bangalore. What we have found is that there were some employees who didn't initially have enough suitable internet capability, but we were able to very quickly get hotspots and devices out to them and allow them to get up and work quite effectively. So I think, especially I can speak to Bangalore, but, I think there's the infrastructure is definitely growing and the capabilities out there are fairly strong. So I think we're doing great out there.
Agree. Okay, next question. So Bill, I'll hand this to you first. The question is, can you provide insight into how far out companies are sustaining operations? What is the average perception?
Yeah, Stanton, I think a very pragmatic approach is being taken. So if their core operations are really something which temporarily is not a necessity, many companies are winding down those specific operations, right? Just to, there's no point. I mean, a very simple example is, our local gym closed, right? And a lot of our, local health centers that are not focused on urgent care but more just on general wellness, are closing down for the short term because there's just not going to be that much activity and use for it. But other operations, which are absolutely critical, are going to be running steadily into the foreseeable future. So there's still a critical need for, for food, for medicine, for power, utilities, for technology, connectivity, for manufacturing of a lot of things that people need, and even some of the less obvious things. So, I'd mentioned earlier, and I'm just trying to give this as a very real world example, but as gyms close down, more people are going to want to buy some equipment they can bring into their own homes to continue to to stay healthy during this time of sheltering in place. So we see delivery operations are continuing. We see a lot of retail products are still being shipped and manufactured, and that's likely to continue. I don't think there's a single answer, but I think, again, it's just every company is going to realistically assess the demand for their products and services, and where there is that real demand, they're going to find a way to sustain operations. And for those where demand is temporarily going to be on a hiatus, then those companies are going to look for ways to wind down in the short term whatever they can wind down, while protecting their capability to ramp back up quickly when the current flatten the curve period of sheltering in place is resolved and we're kind of back to more normal operations.
All right, thanks, Bill. So Lois, I'll come to you on the next question. Any thoughts on how we professionals help our local communities who have never worked remotely before?
That is a great question, and I actually needed to think about that a little bit. But there's a couple things. Well, a couple things I personally, and I guess I'll just talk about something that I've personally got involved in. My daughter happens to be going through confirmation at our church, and so they of course get together every Sunday night to get to do the preparation. And now they can't meet, so I had offered to say, well, why don't we have you all meet virtually, right? We every day meet virtually through different collaboration methods, conference calls, video chat. Certainly the church could do that as well. And I think that's just maybe an example. I think that our communities or our schools definitely are being challenged right now. I think the more that we work with our kids and we can work with the schools to help give them options, I'm sure they're all drastically looking for lots of options to be able to effectively conduct their classes. That would be an opportunity. So I think that's a great question, and I wish I could open up for the audience for more ideas, but I guess we challenge ourselves. This is, we all are in technology. We live it and breathe it every day. Many of us work from home as a standard course for probably years and years. And I think now is the time to reach out to our neighbors, to our community leaders, and just, be advocates, be good examples. And I think that's a great way for, just to give back. And I think I love the question.
Yeah, and Lois, it's kind of funny because with everyone working from home, we kind of get insights onto a lot of things that we wouldn't normally get insights onto. So, as we do our calls and meetings and so on, often a person will say, excuse me for one moment, I need to take care of X. And we're learning that, that our colleagues are working with their neighbors or elsewhere in their community and helping them to overcome some of the challenges of adapting to enabling technology, or how do I get groceries, or we're struggling with with how we're now educating our kids remotely. They're doing homeschooling. So we see folks who've been doing those things earlier coming together and kind of volunteering, and so those things are just going on in the background, and it's not that they're per se disrupting the focus when they're doing business, but you're still aware that they're happening, and it's a really good way to see the communities coming together, and balancing the boundaries of home and community and work in a different way than they have traditionally, and again, something new might come out of this as well.
Okay, I think we've got time for one more question that just came in. So that question is, can you give some organizational examples of what companies do to address actions? Examples, SWAT team, a COVID-19 command center, etc. Lois, Bill, any ideas?
Yeah, I think that the question contains a lot of the answers. Most companies are launching dedicated teams and then sub-teams. So perhaps they have an overarching command center for COVID-19, but that command center is then also empowering teams, and often they're self-selecting teams, to go and explore certain types of things or address specific types of problems, and come back and initiate them. And it's happening organically, and it's happening from a top-down perspective. It's almost a universal theme. Go ahead, Lois. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I think they're also by topic, or by, they're focused in particular areas. For example, I've seen some where they have teams that are, very focused on the financials. As they really need to focus on cost, that team is focused on cost. There's other, then they might have another team that's focused on, the continuity of services working with providers. There's other teams that are focused on how to ensure that their employees are able to be sustained. So absolutely, there's focused areas. And I think, what might be worthwhile, I know me with my team, we are now getting together and saying, hey, what are you hearing? What's your client doing? Or what are your suppliers doing? I think that might be a great way as we get just some insights, lessons learned, again, as a collaboration across, the different industries, across all of our clients. If we can share some best practices that, again, they're being creative, everyone's being creative, I think that would be a great thing for ISG to do, to see what others are doing and maybe share that across the rest of our clients. So I think we should do that.
Agree. Well, thank you, guys. So we need to wrap things up. So we do encourage you to keep an eye on ISG's website and our social media handles. As we talked about, we're going to be publishing a lot more guidance on this over the next coming days and weeks. I do want to give a big thanks to John and Global Meet. As many of you probably are aware, you've been on some webinars and probably experienced some challenges with webinars. So I'm going to give a free commercial to Global Meet here and say you guys knocked it out of the park. Thank you very much. And thank you again so much for your time, and stay safe and have a fantastic weekend.